In Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's Dilemma, we're presented with the question of which food chain would best feed America? If we're looking at logistics here, the industrial food chain would make the most sense. For instance, everything can be produced more quickly, everything can be produced a lot cheaper, and it can be shipped anywhere in the world, meaning anyone can use this food chain to feed. However, there's a lot of problems that arise. For instance, carbon emissions. Since the 1850s, carbon emissions have skyrocketed. And this is a big problem because of this, ice caps are starting to melt and climate change is starting to happen. So some people are starting to combat this and come up with new ideas. For instance, the company John Deere made a tractor where it's completely robotic, but there's no gas in it at all. It relies completely on electricity. It is a complete electric tractor. And it's a real game changer in the ag business. Also, people are using things like digesters to help turn things like manure and rotten food into fuel that's usable. And this video will prove that.
What we do here, we take all of our manure off our dairy, and it comes to a central pit here to your left, and that is our mixing pit, where we add our manure with what we call other substrate. Grease from restaurant grease traps, past cold date beverages, alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, whiskey, rotten eggs, I guess you would call them, or just the bad eggs that don't, non-sellable. It's just all the yucky stuff of life. And that, we blend that with our cow manure and we pump it into a digester. This here is nothing but a big cement box insulated. It's a couple 100 feet long and 90 feet wide. It goes in one end, and it takes 26 days for it to pass the whole way throughout the other end. The whole time it's in there, it's being percolated and agitated with methane itself. It's blowing methane gas down to the bottom of that pit, and the gases rise to the top. So what you're looking at cement vault that's all insulated. The top 2 feet of it is pure gas. And that gas goes through those yellow pipes into that building where there's a big generator that's burning straight methane, making electricity. The electricity goes straight onto the grid we sell with the Puget Sound Energy.
So those are just a couple ways that companies are trying to make things better for people to consume and for people to reduce carbon emissions. Now, also in the industrial food chain, things like nitrogen fertilizer, like urea, is heavily relied on. Now, this arises a big problem. This cuts down on soil health, and a lot of problems can arise. That is, if you just use straight nitrogen fertilizer. But that's not always the case. That's why farmers use things like crop rotation to replenish nitrogen back in the soil. For instance, the crop soybeans actually replenishes the soil with nitrogen while corn uses it. That's why farmers in the Midwest plant mainly corn and soybeans. And fertilizer, if it's used in moderation, for instance, like a 5-gallon tub or a 5-gallon bucket and a 1,000-gallon sprayer tank that's sprayed over 500 acres, it's really not a lot of fertilizer being used. It's the bare minimum of what will make the crops healthy. Same thing for pesticides. If pesticides are used in this moderation, it's really not a bad thing. And people sometimes don't understand that. That if you use it with things within moderation, it's not bad. And another buzzword that's thrown a lot around to make things seem bad, like worse than they already are, GMOs. GMOs are what they call genetically modified organisms, and they put these GMOs into corn seed or soybean seed to help boost the yield or help get rid of pests. And people say, oh, they're putting unhealthy toxins into our body that will end up harming us down the road. That's not the case. The Bt toxins that are put into these corn seeds causes no harm to humans at all. I mean, if we're looking at logistics here, America's not infinite. We have to maximize every farmable acre that we can. That's why we use things like nitrogen fertilizer and like GMOs. so we can get more yield to feed the growing population of the US. And people sometimes don't understand that, and they just look at the negatives when they need to look at the things together. They need to get educated on that. Also, with the industrial food chain, things like big businesses tend to take over. For instance, Bob Evans Farms, Cooper Farms, Tyson Chicken. It's all global companies, and they really don't care, for instance, about their quality assurance of their animals. They really don't care if their animals are healthy or not. That's why things like CAPOs exist, because they just herd a whole bunch of animals into a lot, and they really don't care about them. Now, if things were on a local business, then the animals would be a lot healthier, and they would be a lot happier, because the family that owns this small business, that's all they have. This is all they have. Their business, those cows, or there's pigs or whatever they're raising, that's all they have. And if they lose like an entire barn, their business is done for. And if a big business like Tyson loses a barn of chickens, they really don't care, because they got hundreds of thousands of barns elsewhere raising chickens. And so if we buy local businesses, the quality assurance goes up. And to prove what I just said, here's a video.
We hear a lot about large companies in the news, but small business is the engine of the U.S. economy. America is home to more than 28 million small businesses that employ 57 million workers. And when you add owners and employees together, that's a community of roughly 85 million hardworking Americans dependent on the success of small business, most of the private sector workforce. Small business owners are America's most important job creators. U.S. small businesses accounted for almost 2/3 of the net new jobs created between 1993 and 2013, a grand total of 11.8 million new career opportunities. In 2012, small businesses created more than 2.1 million net new jobs. Small businesses are the country's main job creators because they're often growing and looking for new markets to expand. To do so, they need additional employees along the way. Large businesses, on the other hand, generally stay the same size, hiring new employees to replace departing ones. Unfortunately, high taxes and recent government regulations in healthcare, finance, and labor disproportionately hurt small businesses and prevent them from growing and adding new jobs to the economy. Big business with big profits can afford to comply with red tape in a way that small businesses just starting out cannot. As a result, small businesses still haven't recovered completely from the Great Recession, and it shows by the chronically weak labor market. More than 94 million Americans are not working or actively looking for jobs. The labor force participation rate, which measures the percentage of employees and job seekers in the U.S., is less than 63%, the lowest figure since the late 1970s. To bring small businesses back and strengthen the job market, job-killing taxes and regulations must be rolled back. Job creators should be encouraged to hire more employees, not forced to reduce career opportunities. With 85 million people depending on the success of small business, it's easy to see why small business is too big to fail. For more information about small business, we hear a lot about large companies in the news, but small business is the engine of the U.S. economy.
So that's just one way that why we should rely more on small businesses than big companies, because they really create a lot more jobs than, say, a big company, and they're always looking for new opportunities, and that's why a lot more people can get employed. And if we're looking, 94 Americans are unemployed, that's just unacceptable. People need to get out working, and these small businesses will help change that.
We hear a lot about large companies.
So, in conclusion, if we're looking at logistics here, the industrial food chain would be the best option to feed America. However, it has its problems. That's why a mixture of industrial food chain and the local sustainable food chain to make something I'd like to call local conventional or local industrial really hits it out of the park, as in all the problems with one can be solved with the other, and vice versa. And so I urge you to buy local, but don't be scared of things like GMOs or fertilizer. Thank you.